Yes, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the world's best introduction ever. Is that eagle not ridiculous or what? Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. It's pretty amazing. My husband made that intro for me. He's so awesome. I love him. Okay. Hey, everybody. Oh, wait. Let me turn that off. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Generally Irritable. I'm Erica Reddick. This evening, I am super pleased to have with me as a guest Mr. Patrick White, mayoral candidate for Burlington. Say hello to everybody, Patrick.
How's everybody doing?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm really excited. Patrick, I have to tell you, this was maybe a month ago or so. And I saw who was running, Max, Miro, and Ali. And I posted on Facebook, I said, is it true that we only have basically 3 progressives to choose from? Like, that's it. We have varying degrees of progressive, essentially. I don't even really consider Miro a Democrat at this point. And everybody said no. So, Patrick, where the heck did you come from? What's going on? Why don't you, what we'll start with, because I have about 14,000 questions I want to ask you and things that I want to talk to you about. But why don't you take a minute first to just introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, and tell everybody why you're running.
Well, I have lived in Vermont pretty much all my life, mostly in Addison County. Grew up in a small family business, grew up on a dairy farm on the other side of my family. And so I've lived the Vermont life, between the ridiculous cold and the getting up to my waist in the door. As far as what's brought me to running for a political office generally, I've also seen just the absolute failings, constantly increasing cost of living, a bunch of representatives that don't seem to really represent anybody but their own self-interest, their own ideas. That seems to have, expanded to Burlington. So I've just seeing the failings, seeing everything kind of going sideways has driven me to, pursue it myself, because I'm not going to sit around and complain and not try to fix it. I fix problems for work. I fix problems in my spare time. It's a hobby of mine to solve problems, really.
I've never heard anybody say my hobby is solving problems.
If you ask any of my friends, I'm the guy you call when you've got an insurance issue, a financial issue, a legal issue that doesn't quite require a lawyer, but you might need to be pointed towards one.
Yeah, somebody who can tell you.
I'm the guy that you call when you need advice on some weird stuff that most people don't know about.
Well, as we get started, just a reminder to everyone that this is an interactive conversation. You can feel free. Oh, that's not supposed to be up there. Nobody wants to see my email. Come on now. I should put something like a picture up there. Sorry, squirrel. Okay. It's interactive. Y'all can write a comment, ask a question. This is a real opportunity for us to have a look at a candidate who is different. And I will say, Patrick, in watching some of the other debates, I was intentionally paying attention to how much screen time or talk time the individual candidates got. And I have to say, you got a lot less time to talk than the other 3 that have been in office for some time.
I have noticed quite a bit, actually, and I've been trying not to say anything about it just so I don't seem like I'm whining, or maybe in the moment I think the time's going faster than it is. But I have really noticed that when they call, you have 20 seconds to respond, I'm at 19.9 seconds, and they're like, okay, your time's up. And I went back and I've actually timed it, and I get that 19 and a half seconds, and I've seen, Max and Moreau and them get a minute plus, and then they'll finally be like, okay, your time's up, and then they'll keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've noticed it.
So, okay. So let me see. Oh my God, there's so much. I don't even know where to begin. So one of the things that, screw it. I'll just start wherever I feel like. So we were just talking before we came on about, and just so everybody knows, in case you're new to the program, I'm in a dojo, which is the Taekwondo version of a dojo. So I'm in a Taekwondo studio. Okay. So if you hear banging and screaming of children in the background, it's because there's a Taekwondo class going on.
I've been doing martial arts since I was 5. I probably won't even notice it.
Shut up! Are you serious?
Yeah.
Do you have something you specialize in, or?
I did a whole lot of Aikido, which also had sword stuff in it. But I mean, I started when I was like 5 or 6 in Shotokan karate. I've done a lot of random martial arts stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, now that I know that, when we come back to Vermont to shoot a short film or something, I'm going to call you up.
All right.
My husband is a filmmaker, and he specialized. Well, he does cinematography, but he's also a fight choreographer and stuntman.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. So he's actually in West Texas right now, working on a film. He's the fight choreographer for, and he trains all his guys out of the studio here. So
that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's kind of like probably high school me's dream job, honestly.
His too. That's why he does it.
He just managed to actually make it happen.
Okay, sorry, I'm bragging on my husband, but this is about you, Patrick. This is about you. So, one of the things we were talking about before we got started, wait, can I see comment question? Hold on. I'm getting notes from my technical people.
Computers
okay.
are the bane of my existence.
So, actually, okay, so there is, we actually have a question already.
Cool.
The question is, what is your biggest concern or priority for Burlington if elected?
So, as far as like biggest concern, it's hard to really say one. I mean, there's a few things that really are kind of at the top of the pile. One thing that I'm very concerned about that I keep not hearing from the other candidates, at least, is the issue with the sewage treatment plant. I don't even think the other 3 candidates have it mentioned on their website, and you see them kind of tap dance around it because it's mostly been ignored. I think when I actually asked Moreau a very direct question, basically asking him if he could confirm if he got another term that problem would be fixed before the next 3 years, he tap danced all around it, didn't answer the question, ended up basically bragging about either trying to get or getting $30 million for it. But
yeah, he was saying that he secured a taxpayer bond for the cleanup.
That's a loan. He secured a $30 million loan. I don't care what the numbers are. I don't care where the money came from. I want to know what the plan is. I want to know, okay, you got $30 million. Does that fix the problem? What step are we on? Are we in the planning phase? Have we sat on this money for a year and done nothing with it? Are we still looking for somebody to come up with a plan to use that 30 million, or are we just collecting interest on taxpayer money in the form of a bond and hoping the problem goes away?
It sort of feels like that with a lot of these issues. Like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and there's some big grand plan that's announced, and then you just go, okay.
And then a month later, they issue another statement saying, oops, our bad, another million gallons.
Well, and this is what's really funny to me is I talked to my plumber about this. He came over. We were having a simple issue with water pressure, and he had to replace some valve or whatever. And I don't remember if we had just had a sewage dump or what happened, but I said something to him about it. And he said, oh, well, what the problem is at some point they like, I'm gonna butcher this. Okay. So don't nobody take my word for it, but this is the gist of it. Basically, there's old sewer lines and new sewer lines. And old sewer lines were supposed to be blocked off, but nothing in the old houses, especially like in the new North End and stuff like that, none of those things, they're not marked. So if you're building a new house or you're updating or whatever, the people who are building or doing your plumbing can't tell the difference. And so they're tapping into the wrong sewer lines. That's one of the issues.
I hadn't heard that yet, but I can tell you I've got a friend who he works as an excavator. Um, he's sent me pictures and videos of some of the nasty stuff, and not only has he told me very clear cut, the city is actually losing money by waiting for all this stuff to break before even thinking about fixing a piece of it, instead of progressively fixing it as they go before all the problems.
Yeah.
But he sent me pictures and videos. There's apparently, I believe it's over behind the fire station. Apparently every time it rains, there's a bunch of backup by the fire station, but there's like a 200-year-old, it's like a passage, like a tunnel. And he's like, yeah, there's sewage just actively leaking in there. And guess where that goes? Right into the lake. No sewage treatment plant involved. So we've got a nice direct line into the lake. At least that's what I've been told by a guy who gets his hands dirty fixing this stuff all the time.
I had one person tell me, this is a person from the city, and I don't knock her for this, but she said, oh well, some of that's dumping into the lake isn't raw sewage. It's gray water or whatever, and I said,
gray water is just as bad. Or
I said, okay, so it's not poop, but it's still dirty water.
So
or it's partially treated poop water.
Gray water can be, soap, detergents, stuff you wash down your sink, things like that, versus like some of the untreated sewage that's just literally poop.
It all sounds pretty disgusting.
It's definitely not something that's good for the lake either way.
Because they want to blame farmers for everything, right? Farmers are the bad guy. Oh, this is great. This is really funny. There's a legislation out. This is not Burlington related, where we want to grow all our food in Vermont. And I laughed because I was like, they shut down most of the family farms with their climate change legislation. But okay.
So I'm related. Well, my ex stepfather owns a farm out in Panton, Vermont. That's where I grew up. And they recently, I think it was last year, or the year before, maybe even the one before that, there was a hedgerow along one of their fields. And in order to better use the field and have better drainage, they removed that hedgerow. That's like a bunch of small trees, some large trees, brush, all that stuff to better utilize the space. It was, I want to say, like a quarter mile or more from the actual lake. The tree warden there in Ferrisburg, I think it was, tried to fine them $1 million because yes, for like runoff and stuff, for cutting down, first of all, stuff on their own property, but second of all, stuff to improve drainage and improve the actual space and use of the field. And they tried to slap a dairy farm in Vermont with $1 million fine for that.
And they wonder why everybody's packing up and leaving.
Well, they talk about wanting, small business and farms to be successful and things like that, but they don't seem to want the infrastructure and the actual activities that go along with farming to be here. And the thing that I see the most, like having the, little bit of education that I've had growing up on a farm, not being like super involved in it, but there's no farmer out there who's actively trying to put, manure in the lake. If it's washing off the field, it's not helping the crops.
Right.
A lot of some stuff I've heard from friends who are farmers and from, my family is that they've cut down the window that you can spread to the point where you have to spread so much that there's no way it's not going to run off. I think there's a bunch of people who are against like the injector systems and stuff too, that directly put the manure into the ground, makes it really hard to run off if it's in the ground.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know.
Groundwater or something? They come up with some new reason.
They want farms, but they don't want farming.
Wow, write that down. I'm actually going to write that down. They want farms. They don't want farming. That is so interesting.
Yeah. And
I'm literally writing that down.
If you put organic in front of it, suddenly everyone's very happy about it. If you get the organic certification, people are happy about it. But so my stepfather, his brother moved back to Vermont, and they've got a small organic farm. They've chatted, and he's like, there's basically no difference to what we do. There's just certification. There is almost no difference between his organic dairy farm and our not organic dairy farm.
Yeah, manure is organic. Like all of that stuff is whatever. Anyway, okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm digressing. I want to make sure we focus on Burlington since that's what we're talking about. My producer Jeff will tell me to stay on task. Okay, so this is what we were talking about before we got on a little bit was, Muriel Weinberger, is not the world's worst mayor. I don't think anybody can argue that. He's done a decent job in some things. He's done an atrocious job in other things, in my opinion. But one of the things that he was bragging about, or highlighting his accomplishments, I should say, I'll be kind. An accomplishment that he wanted to highlight was Burlington's credit score. That he's brought Burlington from being from having junk bonds to some A rating, is what he said. But in a city the size of ours, especially given what we're dealing with, $400 million in debt seems like a lot.
Yeah. Yep. We're in the ballpark of 350, probably closer to 400. It's a substantial amount for a city that I was looking at all the financial filings and stuff like that. I believe revenues are only somewhere in the ballpark of like 250 mil a year, something like that. I could be off a little bit. I'm not an accountant, so reading, all the city budgets and everything like that, I don't have it.
Patrick, I am an accountant, and they make it impossible to read. They are the worst financial statements I've ever looked at, and I've been an accountant for 20 years.
I asked no clarification on so many things, and they were only partially helpful. But when I got to the end of it, it looked like about 240, 250-ish in revenue, something like that. But with close to 400 mil in debt, I mean, you're basically making $24,000 a year and buying a $50,000 car. It's just something that we shouldn't have attained in the first place, because we don't have the money to pay it. We're paying on bonds that I think are older than me.
Do you remember? I'm just curious. How much in interest we pay a year?
So that was one thing I wanted them to get for me, which they didn't have. I had found a slightly older, annual financial report, and it very clearly, very directly laid out on a chart every single bond, kind of a short blurb of what it was for, the interest rate, which I think every single one of them was variable, what the initial amount was due, what's left, and the years left to pay it. And I was trying to get that from the city, and they don't have that. Honestly, I think it's too transparent for them to keep in that report, because it very clearly illustrates how upside down we are.
Yeah, all the loans or bonds are basically in the different areas depending on which department got the loan. And then the interest is separated and in different places. So
I was really excited to find that chart, because it painted a pretty great picture.
Well, and the one thing one of your opponents keeps talking about is transparency in the city budget. And so in speaking to that idea of transparency and this claim that we're no longer a junk bond, what do you know about credit scores and how that affects a municipality and where we actually stand. Is that claim true?
So it is true. We Mayor Weinberger did get our credit score, back up into a decent rating. But when I looked into it, the bureau that issues those ratings, because of our outstanding, incredible amount of debt, they wouldn't issue a future rating. So it's kind of like saying you've got great credit today, but tomorrow we're going to have to look at it again. So it's a good thing.
That's really fascinating.
He's kind of, if all of my research is correct, we're essentially kind of on like a probationary good credit score.
I wonder what that means now that they've shut down the city and they've shut down the economy. I wonder what
say, but I have a feeling next year that might, our credit score might be vastly different because we're not going to be seeing some of the same revenues. We're still going to have, close to 400 mil in debt. If that number is wrong, it's in excess of 300 mil. It's just like being upside down on your car.
I think when
down on all of our loans.
Well, that's what's fascinating. If I go to the bank today and I say I want a mortgage, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, it literally, like, what is it? You're not allowed to do, like, your monthly payment or whatever can't be more than like 25% of your monthly income or something.
I'm trying to remember because I did this recently, and I think it's something like 30% or 40% or something. You can't overextend yourself. But the funniest thing is, like, when I was trying to buy a house a few months ago, the amount that they would approve me for is actually a little bit less than I pay in rent. So, I can prove that I can make the payments by paying an absurd amount of rent in Burlington, which thankfully I don't pay an absurd amount. I got an okay deal on an apartment, but you can rent a place here for an absurd amount, but you can't get that same mortgage from the bank because of some of the restrictions that they have.
So that's actually a really great segue, because I was listening to people talk about housing as a human right. And we'll get back to this idea of what a right is. But, my husband and I lived in Los Angeles for a period of time. He's in film. I wanted to study hosting and get into television more. And most of our friends that lived in LA, not only did they have roommates, they had like actual in their room roommates. And we had friends that lived, as an example, in a 1-bedroom apartment, and somebody would their room would be in the living room and the other person's room would be in the bedroom. And maybe there might be 3 or 4 people living in that space. That's a 1 or a 2-bedroom. And because LA is really, really expensive and people don't want to spend all of their money on rent. And so I just thought to myself, why do Burlington residents believe that it is their right to live in Burlington and not have to pay market rate for what the rent is?
So something I've been seeing is if people declare something a human right so that they can then say that the government should pay for it.
Yes.
Housing is important. I think everybody should have a roof over their heads, but there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect right now where people just think that the government can pay for it because they can increase a tax or create some new tax and just bam, create housing, give it to me for free. Same with a bunch of other stuff. Unfortunately, that's not the case, especially on a small scale like Burlington. The city of Burlington is not going to somehow acquire thousands of units of housing and then be able to afford to just give it away to people. And as far as market value, though, I think market value in Burlington is completely blown up. Partially, just because there's not a lot of housing. So, the law of supply and demand, there's not a large supply, so they can charge what they want. On top of that, you've got an insane tax rate all across the board in Vermont when it comes to property. But Burlington, as far as rent goes, they're not helping anything. So I'm friends with my landlord. I'm also friends with another landlord right up the street who's also kind of my boss, I think, pseudo boss. I work with him. He has been a landlord in Burlington for probably longer than I've been alive. They just reassessed his rental house there, and he gets this huge bill. I think it was something like a 30 some odd % increase. And basically he calls him and he's like, this has got to be a mistake. What's going on here? And they said, oh, well, we're rating it, or you're on a income-based plan and we're rating it on market value. So we're taxing you on 1,400 a one bedroom, 2,000 a two bedroom. I think he's got like 2 1 bedrooms and a 2 or something like that. And so he fought it a little bit and only got part of that increase. But when he went to the city about it, they basically said, too bad, it's coming out of your pocket or your tenants. Pick one.
Yep.
So I actually questioned both Joan and Moreau about that, and they tap danced around it. They blamed the state, all that fun stuff. But he actually had one of the cheapest, some of the cheapest units here in my neighborhood. And he now has to blow up his rents by a couple $100s a month because he can't afford it. He can't keep it. So they're not basing it on his income. They're basing it on what they declare market value.
And that's what is so funny to me, is what they don't realize that they're doing. Because I'm a landlord, so I have a vested interest in this argument. And we don't want to charge our tenants so much. We really don't. But if we charge them any less, we will be paying for them to live in our house.
And I keep seeing there's a bunch of young people now who, anyone with money is the enemy. Anyone with property is the enemy. Mm-hmm. And there's this fun new, like pseudo war on landlords where, maybe landlords should get a real job, things like that.
Because it can't be that we have a real job that pays for all the repairs and everything on the property. Anyway, sorry, this isn't about me, it's about you.
There's a lot of young people who know nothing about the cost of ownership, and they think that everybody who's renting out an apartment is making just oodles of cash all the time, and they don't seem to understand. Like, I did the math with my friend today on what he's paying per unit. Just in taxes, in expenses over this past year, the water bill, he includes a few other random things. And I think per bedroom, I worked it up to somewhere around $400 or $500 a unit. And that didn't include the actual cost of the mortgage. So, if you have the money to put the down payment on the house and take on a commercial loan, which is a 7-year loan with a balloon payment, you first off are shelling out a ton of cash, because 20% down right there. So if you're looking at a house that in Burlington is $500,000, okay, you need $100,000 down. So you've just dumped $100,000. You now have a mortgage on top of that you guaranteed are going to have to refinance after 5 or 7 years, dependent. Yep. And then you have costs of upkeep. Maybe 5 years in, you need a new roof. Maybe a year into it, you've got 3 units. They've all got their own boilers and stuff, and all 3 of them die. Bam, there's $15,000 right there, easy. There seems to be a lot of people that don't understand that maintenance and ownership and the mortgages and the amount of taxes directly correlate to what their rent ends up. So, they see landlords as these barons taking all this money from them and pocketing it all and, putting it in a Scrooge McDuck pool and swimming. Yep. And it just isn't the case.
So first of all, you can't take my Scrooge McDuck thing, because I use that. Okay? You don't get to use that. It's mine. So one of the things that's interesting is that a rental reassessment is based on market value,
Mhm.
but cost is percentage of living.
Um, oh, as far as like purchasing?
Well, like when, hold on. Somebody asked a question and I was trying to restate it, but I might be getting it wrong. Why is rental reassessment based on market value when residential is based? Oh. Why? So basically, why is commercial based on market value when residential is based on percentage of living? So like, I can't go get a mortgage. I can go get a mortgage based on what percentage of income I have. Let me see if I'm Jeff. Tell me if I'm asking this correctly. Like, a mortgage reassessment is based on what the market says, but a residential is based on what I can actually pay. Did I get that right? Like, we might have to come back to that.
Oh,
Do you know? Hold on.
are they talking about like the income driven property tax?
I don't know. We'll come back to that. Let's see.
See if
Oh,
they
yeah.
clarify.
Yep. I think that is what he's asking. Yeah.
So to a point, it is the same when it comes to that. Like that reassessment, they are on an income driven plan. But what the city's doing is now saying, well, your income is what market value is. So 1,400 to 1, 2,000 to 2, et cetera, et cetera. Here's your tax bill. So
Oh.
by doing that, because say I'm only charging 1,000 and I'm making a couple $100s a month after all my expenses and stuff. And then bam, I get hit with a 30% increase because they've decided, well, market value 1,400. I now have to increase it at least a little bit more, if not to that 1,400, to be making the same amount of money and getting some sort of return on my investment. So it is income driven, but they're deciding what your income is. They're not
Oh
basing
my
it
God.
on what the actual income is from the property. They're not basing it on your actual rents. They're basing it on what they're calling market value.
That is
And so
amazing. That's,
by
I
doing
don't,
that, you drive up the cost.
well, yeah. And that's interesting because, like, we don't charge market for our apartments because we think market in Burlington is disgusting.
It's
And,
insane.
and
I
we
pay
want,
50% of my income.
and we want people who will stay. We want people who are responsible. We want good people who will respect our property and our
Mhm.
home, because it's our home too. Like, it's not just a building out there somewhere. It's also our home. We live there.
Yep.
And so we don't charge market rate. So that's gross that they force you to do that. So, okay. So this was the question: was my reassessment was based on the living space in the house, not the potential rental income. Isn't that interesting? So the way they reassess commercial property is different than the way they reassess residential property. It's,
Yeah.
this is what we think you can charge for it, and therefore this is what you owe us, rather than
And
this is
that
the actual value of your house.
that could also be one of a couple different ways it's done as far as like what you're supposed to pay. I know there's kind of a lot of different ones as far as like commercial space goes, because if it's like truly commercial space, I think it's done differently. But residential commercial is done that way. I think I might be a little off on that.
Okay. All
But
right.
yeah,
Too many people are asking me questions.
that's
Benjamin,
okay.
there's nothing I can do about the audio because the stupid mic doesn't work and the stupid thing doesn't work. I love you. My husband is telling me that it sounds like I'm in a big room. All I've got is these stupid headphones, honey. If you weren't in West Texas shooting a movie, you could fix my technical issues. But anyway, we're gonna close that question. Okay, so we've got some more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you know? Oh, yeah. So basically, Ray is asking about this idea to ban gas furnaces and oil furnaces and all that, ban anything with fossil fuel nonsense.
So I actually I chatted with Joan on that real quick. We live in the same neighborhood, and I shot her an email or a text on that. And I was asking her about it. Supposedly they're only looking to possibly do that on new construction, which okay for now, but at the same time, say we do that, and then say we also, because supposedly every candidate right now, including Moreau, Ali, and Max, everybody's saying we definitely need more housing and more everything. Say we put that into effect. Say we build a whole lot of stuff in the next 3 years. My worry is that the city can't actually keep up with that. Our grid would end up super taxed. On top of that, they talk about Burlington being green and 100% renewable. I believe a good portion of our electricity actually comes from burning wood.
Yes. Wood
so,
chips that are brought here on trains that burn fuels.
Wood is renewable. It's brought here on diesel trains. But logging's not exactly the most ecologically friendly thing in the world. I think a lot of people hear renewable and they think that we're on solar and wind. We're basically running Burlington with a big old wood stove.
And I believe it was the guy in charge of the plant who came out and was like, look, we can't support that. We can't produce enough power given our current mix of fuels, which is wood chips.
I sent one of the executives an email asking them directly, if a good enough portion of Burlington switched over. This was before I chatted with Joan and found out it was building, anything new. If a good enough amount switched over, at what point do we not have the capacity and all that? And I never got a response from them. But I hadn't heard that. But if there's somebody who runs the place basically saying we can't do it, we should probably listen.
Well, and not to mention they don't have the capacity. So first of all, I'm trying to remember if somebody can remind me, was it in Digger or 7 Days I saw it? And this person was talking about, he was on WCAX, was talking about basically we can't produce enough power given what we're doing for the increased demand. Mm-hmm. They're using, Burlington and Vermont are using taxpayer dollars to offer grants to people to change out to electric burners. So even though they're saying it's only on new construction, they're using our money to put electric furnaces in people's houses.
Here's another part of that. As far as switching over to an electric furnace goes, I was chatting with somebody that kind of knows how to do that. And it's not like switching from oil to gas. It's legitimately, you have to rewire part of the house, I guess, and basically set yourself up to pull a lot more power. So it's not just as simple as going and buying an electric boiler. No. It's a small remodel of that whole space there, and the power supply coming into the house and all that fun stuff.
And you might need a new breaker. You might need a new box. You would need to do new wiring. Like on a house like mine that's old in the New North End and was built cheaply back in the 50s or 60s or whatever it was, 60s, we would need a whole new electric box.
And that's something that this doesn't take into consideration, is that so much of the construction in Burlington is very old. Like I've said a million times, I work in insurance. I'm writing policies for houses and stuff. And when I see a house that's only 30 or 40 years old, I'm like, ooh, it's basically brand new.
Brand new.
I'm writing insurance for buildings in Burlington, in Chittenden County, proper in the city, with construction dates early 1900s, late 1800s. And we're going to take all these old houses and retrofit them once again for the millionth time to switch over to electric.
Yes. For electricity and heat that costs 2 to 3 times more than the national average.
So I looked at some of the new construction, and when I was looking for an apartment, first of all in Burlington, and one of the big brand new shiny places that was going to be like $15.50 a month plus all my utilities, 100% electric, heat and everything.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I've paid electric heat in Vermont. I'm not doing it again.
No. Oh my God. Especially not in Burlington.
Not on top of $1,500 a month.
No, especially not in Burlington. That's what people don't understand, because
It's too cold.
we have a municipal utility which has a monopoly on the market in Burlington, and so we live for the same power that Burlington acquires from Hydro-Quebec. We pay twice as much per kilowatt as they do in Plattsburgh. Literally. Okay. So, okay. Let's see. Ray says, yes, correct about power. Electric boiler requires 100 amps or more. So yeah, my whole house would have to be rewired, basically. Heard new rentals would have to comply with the new fossil fuel reduction plan. Yes, we covered that. Let's see. Deb is asking, let's see. She's got a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Okay. Wastewater being one. Deb, he addressed that earlier in the program. So if you want to go back and watch it. A lot of people are asking specific, if you have any specific plans. That was the one critique that I heard was, Patrick says the right things, but we want to hear a plan. Like,
so,
what is your plan?
Some of the plans I kind of have to paint in broad strokes, because unlike some of the city councilors and the mayor himself, I am not already doing this. I don't already have access to all of the paths that I can take. So I can make as many plans as I want. Whether or not they can actually come to fruition when I'm given the resources, I'm not so sure. So sometimes I'm a little hesitant to outline a plan that I have, because I don't want to promise something that I inevitably can't come through on.
Mm-hmm.
As far as some of the issues like the water treatment plant and stuff, the sewage system throughout the city, I am friends with contractors who work with this stuff on a daily basis. I've been in contact with them generally about their opinions on stuff. I have a connection to a company here in Vermont that they're actually one of the people you call, like if a tanker full of gas flips over and there's gasoline everywhere, they're the ones you call to come pick that up and clean it up. And I've got some connections to different entities throughout the state, and I want to keep a lot of this as local as possible. It's just hard to outline some of the plans that I have and not feel like I'm promising something that I may inevitably have to drastically alter. And I don't want to be the guy that promises way too much and doesn't deliver on it.
Have you considered, I'm curious if you've considered how much, like, especially like for wastewater things or land use, I'm curious if you are aware of the volume of rules and regulations, the zoning issues, many of which, Burlington has expanded or expounded upon the state stuff, but I'm curious if you get the level of stuff you cannot do.
To a point, I do.
Okay.
One thing I do want to address, just generally, is if Burlington has put in place a rule that makes it impossible to make a positive change, like fixing the sewage treatment plant, we need to look at removing that rule. Because if we've regulated ourselves to the point where we can't even stop dumping sewage into the lake, there's obviously a problem there.
I'm sorry, that was good. I might write that down too. Sorry for.
No worries. That's kind of my feeling on a lot of government, is if we have grown government and we've grown regulations to the point where we can't actually make positive changes, like stopping dumping sewage into the lake, like creating like actual reform in the police department, not just, you know, destroying the police department and screaming success. If we've regulated ourselves to the point where we cannot actually make any good changes and help the city prosper, we need to look at that before we look at making any of those changes. Because if that's the case, then there's too much in our way to make the changes that everybody wants to make.
That is probably the most important thing I've heard a candidate say in a really long time. And that was actually a good segue, because one of Deb's other questions is about BPD staffing and support. So this was one I was prepared to give you crap about. So I'm curious what your answers are going to be.
Okay.
You know, because there's been a lot of demonizing of the police officers.
Yeah.
And of BPD generally. And as a person who, you know, I've shared about this before, I've been arrested before. I got picked up by Burlington Police Department. I got arrested once by Burlington Police Department back in the day when I was a troublemaker. And, you know, I've never been treated with anything but the exact amount of dignity and respect I deserved, given what my interaction was. Now, some people will say that's because I'm white. I don't think that's so. And I've definitely had interactions with police where they were just not pleasant, but I don't expect police to be pleasant to me. I mean, they cannot be jerks, but they're cops. I expect them to be cops.
Policing is an extremely tough job. And I think that there are far too many people who are very comfortable breaking out the old John Madden marker and saying, well, this is what you did wrong in this high stress situation where you thought you could possibly die. You know, looking at some of the issues that people have protested and stuff, you know, quite a few of these have merit and should not have gone on. The one that I've seen videos on that really disturbed me. I'm trying to remember. I believe it's the officer that they paid to go away, where he ended up pulling that man out of the SUV at the hospital, punching him in his head, and he inevitably died. When I watched that video, so like I said, I've been doing martial arts for a very long time. I know how to handle myself. I know how to handle other people. And I also know that if I'm trying to restrain somebody, I don't bust them in the skull. That's not really a way to de-escalate things. It's also not really a way to, you know, apprehend somebody or immobilize them, and unless your intention is to cause some serious harm. Punching somebody in the head is 100% not your first move, cop, civilian, no matter what. If you're trying to de-escalate a situation or, you know, apprehend somebody, it's the same reason why you're not allowed to take out a baton and smack somebody in the skull with it.
Well, so now for the record, the whole context was not given in that video. So you didn't see the lead up to it. You didn't see everything that happened before. And you don't know the history of that man that the police officer was interacting with.
But here's the thing. History, regardless, unless the video that I watched, he wasn't really fighting. He was an old man who I believe just got out of surgery or something. To have your first move be to punch somebody in the head is not at all a measured response. No matter the situation. Well, I mean, the situation is going to really matter. But in that situation, with somebody sitting in a car yelling at you, hurling obscenities, it seemed more like the response was from anger than any sort of, you know, proper response to it. I've had plenty of insults hurled at me. I've had people, you know, I've been treated somewhat unkindly, and my instant reaction is not, I should try to fracture this person's skull. You know,
Well, I don't think that was exactly what was happening. But there is a lot
a
of
little out of
context that was
proportion,
not
but
given. So they released a
yeah.
video without context. They released a video without the lead up to it. They released a video without any sort of information or anything like
So
that. And so that's the thing that, I mean, this, anything taken as a fragment of a really unfortunate tragedy, you can make to look a certain way, or it
oh,
can
most
look a
definitely.
certain way. And so if the police officer was cleared of any wrongdoing, I don't understand why people, I'm going to give you, this is when I told you, Patrick, I want you to be good, and so but I'm going to give you crap.
Yeah.
How can you yourself don't even know the circumstances of the story, so how can you blame that cop and say that what he did was out of line when you
So
yourself don't even know the history of the circumstance?
so I know, of course, what the media had reported. I know
Mhm.
what the video showed. That's really all I can go on. I'm I'm always hesitant to kind of give the John Madden without actually seeing video, things like that. For me, though, I understand use of force, maybe not to the degree of somebody who is an acting officer or military, things like that. But, like in that case, what I saw was a very quick escalation to what inevitably led to somebody dying. Um, it's like with
Now, are you aware that that person was had serious drug addiction issues and various health issues
Mhm. Yeah,
that already like put them in a position to be vulnerable for that
most
stuff?
definitely. Um,
Okay.
I was aware of that. But again, that's why I say that the response to grab him and punch him in the head was not measured. It of course is, hindsight's 2020, and to look at interactions like that and say, well, I would have done it different. Everybody can sit there and say that, but until you're in that moment, I can say I've been in moments like that where, somebody was actively trying to hurt me, and I've had to respond appropriately in ways that, sorry, bug, in ways that, kept me safe. Um, None of them ever resulted in somebody dying. Of course, I don't think I've ever had somebody try and fight me who had, substance abuse issues and health problems that were, already affecting them. But I can tell you in that situation, because I've been in high stress situations, if the whole end goal for me is to restrain this guy, my first move isn't going to be to grab him and punch him in the head. It's going to be to pull him out of the car and get him on the ground.
If,
And
if you can.
if you can, of course. But the first move to punch him in the head, that to me was, as somebody who really knows what happens when you punch somebody in the head really hard, even a healthy person, that wasn't a measured response.
Okay, well, I want to keep talking about this, and I really want to push you because, but I know we got to move on. But I will
Yeah.
just say, I would encourage you to talk to somebody who knows the actual circumstances regarding that situation rather than depending on the information you've been able to get from the media.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about that. So, in light of that, um, what is your stance on the police? Do you think defunding the police is okay? What do you think about the fact that we're fixing to be without
So,
enough officers for coverage and all that kind of stuff?
the whole knee-jerk reaction to defund the police because of a tragedy, at least driven by a tragedy that happened, outside of our state completely, that was such a mistake. To do something like that with little forethought is, I mean, so just not doing your job, honestly. And then, of course, you have Moreau, who keeps saying how against it he was, and he didn't want that to happen. And he put forth this proposal that was different. And ultimately, he wants you to elect him to the current position that he has that gives him the power to veto that decision that he chose not to use. Then on the other side, you have Max Tracy, who balks in the face of that and then pushes this like it's been some grand success and says that, you know, it's because crime's gone down. Meanwhile, a couple days before he was just saying that at the last forum I was in, there was an active shooter situation at the U-Mall.
Yes, at Target.
So,
or in the food court or whatever. Yeah. And they don't talk about the fact that we had 3 gang shootings in the New North End this last summer. Like, nobody hears about that. Nobody talks about it.
That's something I noticed is as soon as that vote went through, I don't know if it's just that I noticed it more, but I did see a couple of shootings and things like that happening. And then I'm not sure if you remember the day there where all the graffiti was there downtown. That started from my neighborhood and worked its way into downtown. I could probably tell you who it was. It would probably take me about 10 or 15 minutes to track them down if it was all still up, because it legitimately started right next to my apartment and worked its way into downtown up Pine Street. And so, you know, shootings, graffiti all over the city. It's to say that we don't need a police force here or that we can cut it down and, you know, lose a shift in the middle of the night is asinine. You know, I do support the police. I, of course, think there needs to be reform just generally, because I think, you know, police forces.
So speak to that. When you say reform, what do you mean exactly specifically by that?
So I feel like the police force in the U.S. generally has become very militarized. You know, we're kind of moving away from keeping peace and sometimes like pursuing things that don't really matter too much, and calling it justice.
Can you give an example?
I think that open container laws are absurd. I think that public drunkenness should be something that assessed, but like,
well, that crap is just to try to deal with the out of control college students.
Well,
but I agree.
Here's the thing. Even though everybody drinks beer on the beach and in the parks and stuff like that, it's, as far as I know, it's illegal. You could get ticketed for it. You could get enough tickets for them to slap cuffs on you eventually. You know, little things like that. It seems like there's a lot of very small victimless crimes that end up, you know, on the books, and they just seem a little more like babysitting than like policing and keeping the peace.
In Burlington, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, being at a house party, having a respectful amount of volume, and I've, you know, answered the door for people that were scared because the cops came because somebody walked by and smelled marijuana. Uh-oh, there was marijuana being smoked inside a house. You better send the cops.
That's not a thing. Really?
It happened.
Whatever.
It could have been an excuse. Maybe they
I'm
just.
sorry. I just think that's funny. Like, I didn't think people cared about that anymore.
Yeah, this was a couple years ago. This was before legalization and everything. But
yeah, but still.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I'm going to stop you though.
Yeah.
Okay. There's like 6 comments at least that say, "Are you or are you not for defunding the police?"
I'm not for defunding the police. Let me just put that flat out. I am not for defunding the police.
Okay.
I think that, you know, crushing our police force, demoralizing the officers is going to have such a negative effect that we're in for it. If we keep this up and we keep this going and we put in yet another board that's going to cost taxpayers a whole lot of money to, you know, review the police, like Murrow Weinberger just vetoed, that everybody's very mad about him vetoing. If we put in yet another board that is legitimately a paid hit squad for any time a cop may or may not mess up, we're going to get to a point where we don't have good options for hiring officers. All the good officers are going to leave.
Yes.
And when you have a place that nobody wants to be a police officer, you end up having to hire out of the bottom of the barrel. And that's not going to be a good thing in the long run.
And that's a lot of people don't realize, and I try to highlight this as much as possible. We have major drug trafficking that goes through our borders from Canada and from the South, New York and New Jersey and places like that with the heroin problems that we have. 2 sex trafficking rings were broken up in the last 18 months. Oh, yeah. Sex trafficking rings.
In Vermont.
2 of them. 2 of them. One was in Burlington and one was in South Burlington.
But Erica, crime is going down. We should cut our police force.
Well, and then they want to legalize prostitution, which I know you have a little bit of a libertarian streak in you. And so there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's whatever people want to do. But there's all these women who were trafficked coming forward against the prostitution bill they're trying to pass in the legislature. And it's like, these are not victimless crimes. These are drug addicted women who are, go ahead.
Here's the thing on prostitution and sex work and stuff. I lived in Las Vegas for a couple of months, writing insurance and stuff. I, at one point, quoted a brothel. I had to learn a lot. And it's kind of intense when you see the amount of regulation that goes into it and stuff. I can understand somebody that's been involved in sex trafficking, especially against their will, being against legalization of prostitution. But like in Nevada, because of how regulated it is, it would be pretty damn near impossible to have a situation like that because, they can call the state. Like if you've got somebody violating the laws and stuff and, trying to keep you against your will, perform any sort of acts against your will, anything like that. I mean, even using protection is in the law. You call the state and the state comes in and lays the smackdown on whatever employer is trying to operate like a pimp. It's, right. I'm not going to say it's a perfect setup or prosecution is this big, great, positive thing, but to keep it relegated to back alleys and things like that, you end up putting people more in danger than you would if you had regulation around it.
We're gonna have to disagree on that one and move on because there's some other local stuff that people are asking about.
I'm not saying I'm gonna push through a bill.
Oh no, we're talking about it now. It's on, Patrick. It's on. Okay. Because I'm really excited to have somebody who is, clearly very thoughtful about what's going on and trying to look at it at least from both sides. That this is not, Burlington is not, contrary to popular opinion, Burlington is not a homogenous place. It is a very diverse group of people, not just skin colors and whatever. It's our cultures. It's the way that we think, our politics and things like that. And if we want to be a truly inclusive city, then all of those things have to be respected, whether you like them or not.
That's a big thing for me. I have my own thoughts, opinions, and things like that. But when it comes down to it, I see so many people running for offices in Burlington and in Vermont, and they very much are about their own agenda or their party's agenda, and that is it. For me, if I could just, wave a wand and just get a census of everybody's thoughts on things, if there was something that I supported that I found out like 90% of everybody in Burlington thought it was a stupid idea, I'm not going to push it through because I like it. As a public servant, you're supposed to be serving the public, not serving your own interests, not serving your own agenda, not, pushing through bills written up by random advocacy groups just because, they wanted it. it's serving Burlington on a whole and not just one segment of people that you agree with.
Hmm. Hmm.
I know I'm terrible, right?
I wish more people thought that way. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Ballot question 3 talks about assessment of carbon impact or alternative compliance payments, which means fees and penalties. So do you support that ballot item?
I haven't read that one yet.
That's basically, what is it, CTI or whatever the acronym is. Basically, they want to charge you a fee for using gasoline.
The carbon tax-esque thing that they were talking about putting. Yep, no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So this is what gets me as far as carbon taxes go. How is paying more money to the government going to reduce your carbon? How is it going to reduce the carbon footprint of Burlington by giving the city more money, which they will inevitably reappropriate into something that has absolutely nothing to do with creating a greener community?
No, Patrick. They swear they're going to use it for building renewable things and
So Vermont,
replacing people's boilers with electric boilers so we can burn more wood chips.
Last I knew, Vermont had one of the lowest carbon footprints of any state, I think.
I think it's actually the lowest, but I could be wrong. If it's not the lowest, it's like top 2.
We're pretty up there. So
we carbon sequester. So that's what we don't, because of our trees and whatever, we actually carbon sequester, carbon sequestration. So we reduce more carbon than we produce.
So to act like Vermont has a big carbon foot problem and we need to put in all these taxes and fees and fines and penalties is almost laughable.
You don't think it'll make Burlington more affordable?
You mean increasing the barriers to owning a home? Yeah, that'll make it more affordable. I mean, we already charge people like $45 every time they want to change a freaking light bulb in a house they own. Yeah. Why not throw on a carbon tax? Why not? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking to general affordability and all this, to first of all say that we have a carbon problem so bad that we need to start fining people and adding these fees and taxes is laughable. It's another way to grab money, which, as we've all seen so many times, it's going to inevitably end up in something that has absolutely nothing to do with building a greener community. When it comes to building greener, I don't think that, or operating greener generally, I don't think that handing off yet another sum of money to the city of Burlington is actually a fix. And I don't think yet another fee, yet another tax, or fine is going to make people more able to own or live here. When you see things like that, it really just speaks to the absolute disconnect in the city council, and you see some on the state level, between the people in charge, reality, and their citizens. Because most of the people I know already can't afford to live here, so slap yet another tax or fine on them, and it's just going to drive them out of state.
Well, that was one of the most fascinating parts about watching y'all's previous debates, was listening to Max Tracy in particular talk about how unaffordable it is and we need to make it affordable to live here. And then he talks about how he's going to tax.
When Max says we want to make it more affordable and make affordable housing, what he means is he wants to implement things like rent control and create more Section 8 housing, things like that. Rent control inevitably makes it harder to get housing. It can inevitably make it more expensive too. I mean, when you start imposing more and more regulations on what landlords are allowed to do and what they're allowed to charge and stuff, you end up with landlords who are going to vet their tenants much more carefully. So you end up with landlords who every chance they get to raise their rents, they're gonna do it because maybe they can't raise their rent for the next 3 to 5 years because they're locked down, and they're also going to vet those tenants very, very well because they're talking about making it much harder to evict somebody.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're going to impose more regulations on what I'm allowed to charge somebody for a unit I own, and then you're also going to make it really hard to evict somebody, even if I have like a decent reason, I'm going to make sure that not only am I getting paid enough to continue renting that place out at a gain, instead of just breaking even or just a loss, but I'm also going to make sure that that tenant who, they may be there 6 months, they may be there 6 years. I'm going to make sure that that tenant isn't somebody who destroys my property, is going to pay my rent, can afford to pay the rent, and, is generally a stand-up all-around person by my own specs.
Yep.
The more you regulate things like that, the less control you have the owners feeling like they have. So the little bit of control that they do have, they're going to end up using it to the best of their ability. And
that's they dog out landlords who have dumpy houses, and it's like, well, first of all, some of those houses you can't even fix properly because like the New North End is going to be considered a historical district in the next decade. And if you're going to make me do historical renovations on my hockey house, like, get out of here. These things were built cheaply in the first place, and now you want me to make it like period appropriate?
At the same time, they want to be eco-friendly, which means you need to make things more efficient. But you need to make them more efficient, but make them look super old. Doesn't really quite go together. So do we want to, better and improve the structures so that they work more efficiently, so that we burn less fuel, we use less electricity, or do we want to keep it looking like it was built in 1960?
There's a landlord, I don't remember which building it is, but oh, that's a good question. Okay, I'm going to get to this one next. There's a landlord downtown, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but there is a rule in Burlington that you can't have for the siding on your property. It's like a 3-inch reveal or a 4-inch reveal. It's one or the other. You're allowed to have either a 3 or a 4-inch reveal on your siding. And this landlord got his house renovated, one of his properties renovated, put up this fancy new siding that's good for insulation. It helps keep the heat in and does all this stuff. And they fined him because it was the wrong reveal size. And he was like, I can't get that. I can't do that. And this makes it better for my tenants, and it looks nice, and I'm not going to have to paint it because it's, this fancy new siding. So that saves all this chemicals and this and that and whatever. And they were like, nope. And they fined him like 20 grand for having the wrong reveal.
To go back to what I said earlier, if we have regulated ourselves to the point where we can't make positive changes, that's the major issue we need to change. Because if people are getting fined for improving things and making them more ecologically friendly, making them more efficient, we shouldn't be punishing them. It's almost hilarious because they make these historical districts and they make these rules for what you can and can't do to your property, but then they also say at the same time, we want you to make it as ecologically friendly and as efficient as possible. So yeah, do both of those things. Oh, they're not possible? Here's a fine.
So speaking of housing, we have a question. Is it Ray or Rye? I'm going to forgive me for pronouncing this wrong. I think it looks like Rye, but it could be Ray. He says, do you have a plan for elderly who get evicted? My understanding is there are no laws. You can be 90 and be thrown in less than a week for any reason. Okay, first of all, that's not true. Whoever told you that is lying to you. So there is no cause eviction. As a landlord, you can be evicted. And I'm sorry, I should be letting you probably answer this, Patrick. But No, that you, first of all, if you want to evict someone, it's like a 6-month process. You can't just throw somebody out and have them out for a week. But what do you think, Patrick, about um, like this stuff about evictions? And I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know if you want to respond to that question. I mean, it's just not
I'm
true. Like, it's just not
that's
it's
honestly a
not a
hard
true
question
thing.
to respond to. I mean, the situation in itself, that when it comes down to it, I support landlords, rights over their own property. Um, if somebody has an actual reason to be evicted, whether it be, not paying their rent or they're destroying the property or something like that, then I think a landlord should have the right to evict that person. Um, I think generally in this country, the elderly, though, really don't, especially ones without family members who can help them. They really don't often get some of the care that they really need. I think many of them kind of expected Social Security to take care of them, and they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, especially with the rising cost of living here. That's I'm not even sure how to answer that question, to be completely honest. If I personally saw that, I would, put forth my own resources. I don't know about trying to make a regulation through the city, but if I personally saw that, I would, put forth some sort of charitable effort of my own to try and help in the situation. But I don't know how the city could regulate that with the age and the situation and stuff like that. I'm a big believer in, people being charitable on their own. So that's kind of the only way I could think to address it.
Yeah. Well, and he said, so forgive me, Rye, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. He said Vermont Tenant Association told him that. And I can tell you that the Vermont Tenant Association says many things that are untrue. And unfortunately, the Landlord Association is not given the same amount of time to talk to people to address blatant, outright lies like that. There are tons and tons and tons. Ryan, it's Ryan for short. Okay, Ryan. Got it. Rye, so it is Rye. There are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of resources for people in Burlington and in Vermont who are homeless or might be homeless. There are tons of homeless shelters. There are other shelters. There are care facilities. There's Section 8 housing. There is so much out there for people who need help, who are in genuine need of help. So for the Vermont Tenant Association to say that a 90-year-old is just going to get kicked out in less than a week and screw you, I would like for someone to provide evidence of that. And I'm sorry, you should be answering that. I forgot you're supposed to be talking, Patrick.
No, no worries.
That stuff just makes me mad as a landlord, especially. This is the kind of stuff that we fight against.
So
It's this misinformation.
Just generally right now, the whole rich, poor, landlord, tenant, police, civilian,
Us against them.
it benefits us so little, and benefits, media and politicians so much, at least in place politicians, so much, to have this constant us versus them mentality where everybody's an enemy, except for, the government. They're trying to help you. Don't worry. It bothers me so much because you're so often not allowed to find common ground with anybody now who has a different situation with you. I mean, even today, so I had Zariah Hightower telling somebody to ignore me on Facebook because we were talking about, what was it? So we were talking, somebody posted this stupid thing. It was a sign some landlord put on their yard of their tenant's place where it was like, no Max Tracy, no higher taxes, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was saying, the typical disconnected stuff about how, landlords should get a job. And, he never said anything about raising taxes. And what do taxes have to do with rent? And I never said anything about Max saying that he would raise taxes. I said something about historically, I don't know if Max has said anything directly about raising taxes. I think that would be, no politician out there is going to run on a platform of I'm going to raise your taxes. But I mentioned something about historically progressives have raised taxes, increased fees, created new taxes. And, I never said anything about Max saying he would or anything like that. Somebody said that I did, but I was like, well, I never said that. But historically, if you look at it, oftentimes progressives do tend to increase taxes, increase fees, which I consider taxes, create new ones. So don't know why you asked, but there's my 2 cents. And Zariah Hightower is in there telling me, oh, just ignore him. Don't engage with him. And it's like, okay, so already we're not allowed to find any common ground. We're not allowed to discuss an idea. We're not allowed,
No,
maybe this guy has some information that I can learn, or maybe I can teach him
no,
something. We don't know.
no,
But
that's
I've
not
got somebody
allowed.
who's a city councilor telling other people involved in this to
Shutting
just ignore
down
it.
debate.
So
That's pretty disappointing.
it's
Oh
just
my
funny
God.
generally though, because it doesn't benefit any citizens. It benefits politicians who claim to be people's saviors. It benefits the media because they
The
make a ton of
status
money.
quo. Yep.
But it doesn't benefit anybody for all of this us versus them. The rich versus the poor, the civilians versus the police, the landlords against tenants.
Black, white, male, female, gay, straight. Like we all have to hate each other for whoever you are because it's bad.
It seems that a lot of acceptance is pushed at the same time as you need to accept everybody. By the way, if somebody's different, make sure you also hate them.
Yeah. Well, that's what I found so troubling when I moved back to Burlington in 2018. I'm from Vermont, born and raised. And one of the many organizations I volunteered for before I moved to Texas was Vermont Freedom to Marry, which was an organization fighting for gay marriage. And, one of the things I've even argued with my conservative people about is it doesn't matter. Okay. The state doesn't get to discriminate. So it doesn't matter if you think traditional marriage is better for
the government generally needs to stay out of people's bedrooms and out of their pants. I don't care if you're gay, straight, trans, whatever.
Why does the government have anything to say about that?
Generally speaking, you don't get to legislate somebody's existence,
So now, but here's the thing. So this was my thing, that was something I volunteered for. I thought it was important. But now that I'm back, I'm discriminated against for being a Christian because that means I'm a terrible, evil, hateful, bigoted person. Don't you know? It means I hate gay people, apparently. Which I can't figure out, but
it's more of the us versus them. The majority of the people that I know who are, very Christian, grew up in Vermont and also, have no problem with, gay rights and things like that because they don't. Like, they may not fully agree with it, but they're the people that I know that are very religious are also kind of like, well, it's not my choice. I don't get to tell you whether or not you get to exist, it's insane.
Oh my God, why is everybody so mean? Okay, so oh my God, we've been on for 90 minutes already. Holy crap. That went by really fast. Okay, hold on.
I'm just that awesome. You're welcome.
Oh my God. It's just, there's just like, I want to be able to like get to know who you are. And I want everybody to know who you are so that it's not just this, oh, here's this random guy that's running. And because I know from my experience, if you're not one of the cool kids, you don't get the same kind of shine from
I
media.
am 100% getting ignored by certain media outlets, Vermont Digger to be one of them.
That doesn't shock me.
7 Days has actually been pretty cool. WCAX has been back and forth. They the one big time they reached out to me, they literally gave me like 24 minutes to get back to them and get on the phone with them to do like a quick interview thing. And then when I was like, I'm at work, I can't exactly just hop on the phone right now. they're like, oh, well, we'll come back to it.
Wow.
You know,
Oh
stuff
my
like that.
God. So one of the things I want to make sure you address before we get off.
Yeah.
And there is somebody else has one other question that I think would be meaningful, but the most important thing I want to know is, you're a newcomer and, you have highlighted that, or you've mentioned, I heard you mention a few times, everybody that's running for mayor right now helped contribute to the problems that we're facing. Like, you guys are you have a vested interest in
mysteriously
keeping the
they have
status
all these
quo.
problems, but they're nobody's fault.
Right. And so, but then other people are going to say, well, yeah, but who's this guy? He's like 15 years old and he's got no experience in city governance or anything like that. And you're not really 15. I did pick on you because you're younger than me, but, young guy, no experience in city council or in an executive position like the mayor. So what do you think the benefit is of having a newcomer with less experience versus like like a Muro who's been there and knows the game?
Well, I mean, generally putting a new set of eyes on something is almost never a bad idea. As far as not having experience doing the job, it's very rare that you find a mayor who's previously been a mayor unless they're currently the mayor. So I think it's kind of funny. It's almost like that argument of you need 5 years of work experience to get this job. Okay, but how do I get work experience? It's funny, and they paint being the mayor of Burlington as this incredibly difficult job, and I don't see it as that. I have an incredibly difficult job. I've done incredibly difficult jobs that involve dealing with people and businesses and money and finances and a heap of legalese, red tape, regulations and rules. It's not my first rodeo, and this stuff honestly is not as hard as they make it seem. They make it seem harder so that people like me don't run. Honestly, there are plenty of cities that have a goat or a dog as their mayor. Maybe
that
small
is not true. You just made that up.
No, you Google it. There's a good couple of cities. I know of at least one goat. I know of at least 2 or 3 dogs as city mayors. It's Burlington's probably more complicated than those cities, but to act like being the mayor is this hyper difficult job, and you need somebody who's already a multi-million-dollar CEO to do it. That's a falsehood.
That's fair. One question is examples of how you would build an administration. So I'm not sure what that exactly means. Do you have an idea of what that might mean?
I have a feeling. So honestly,
like committee people or like the mayor on your staff.
The mayor actually doesn't have as much power as a lot of people think. One of the primary roles of the mayor is you select the heads of, I can't remember if it's 10 or 11 different things like public works and all that fun stuff. Yeah. As far as my plan, I've got a few of those picks already planned out, and they're people that actually work in industries that directly tie to those roles. And they're people that I know they came from not the greatest of means. They had to work their way up. They haven't just been sitting on some board getting paid a bunch of money to do half of a job. They're people that have common sense, first of all, because common sense to me, I feel like, is a very important thing, and it's becoming more and more uncommon. They have common sense. They have, actual ideas of what needs to be improved, and not just some pet project that they want to take on. Those are the people that I look for, actual professionals who have worked their way up through related fields that know how the inner workings work and actually want to make positive changes, as opposed to continue what we've been doing or focus on some pet project. I mean, I've seen more work being done on the bike path this year than I've seen done on the actual roads. We put more money into gentrifying City Hall Park than we put towards the upkeep of the roads for the entire year.
Wow.
It's, that doesn't include, I believe, state and some federal funds, but I believe the number last year was like 2.4 million for the roads in Burlington. And the number for the money that the city actually put towards City Hall Park was like 3 mil. You're telling me that you can successfully upkeep the roads in Burlington for $500,000 less than you put towards a single park that's what, like a square acre, too, maybe?
I don't even think it's that big. Maybe an acre.
And
maybe.
I mean, the water feature is cool and all, but we put a water feature in a state where half the year it's below freezing. I mean,
I ask that. I say stuff like that all the time. I was literally, what was I just writing about or talking to somebody about? I was like, it's winter. You need your heat like 9 months out of the year.
Like, it's cool and all, like water features are cool, but to put a water feature in, to first of all take down one water feature that hasn't been on in, I think, a couple years. I haven't seen it running, and replace it with yet another water feature in a state that it's, sub-freezing temperatures at least 3-4 months out of the year. It's unpleasant to get wet another couple of months out of the year.
Yeah, when you talk a lot in your copy and stuff about fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
And being responsible with our money. And
I mean, the total cost on the park was actually, I think, like 5 mil, but I was only counting the contributions that were like directly from the city, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and then people can donate to add something with their name on it or whatever.
Yeah, I think somebody donated like over $1 million or something like that. But
oh my God.
More money into that park than into the upkeep of the streets.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. I can't drive to work a single day without hitting a pothole that makes my soul leave my body for a minute as I'm counting up like how much money it's possibly going to cost me to fix my car after hitting it.
Yeah, no. No, it's way more important that you should be able to go into the water feature and splash your feet around.
3 months out of the year, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So tell everyone, Patrick. Okay, so thank you, first of all, everybody, for joining us this evening. Patrick White, mayoral candidate for Burlington. Tell everybody you know. Spread it far and wide. If you want to volunteer, go to his website. I'm going to tell you to tell everybody the website and stuff in a second. Oh, go ahead.
A real quick blurb that I wanted to throw out that I never got to. Two real big things.
Wait, hold on. Wait, hold that. Hold that thought because I'm going to come back to it.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a chance to close. So, so Patrick White running for mayor. Tell everybody that you know that it's been great having him on. I'm going to give him a moment to close in just a second. But the big thing is, folks, it's super important that we help share and promote content like this, where you can come and listen to a conversation with Patrick that you would not otherwise get to have in other media and in other sources. People who are not in the box really are being silenced and censored and shut out. This channel, my channel, I can't advertise anymore. I can't boost anything. All I can do is get more eyes and more viewership if you share this content. If you like and subscribe, go to my YouTube channel, Generally Irritable, and subscribe so that we can continue to have opportunities to talk to people like Patrick that would not otherwise be there. So you can also go to my Patreon page, Patreon/Generally Irritable, and donate to help continue this content. I've also started the news program, and he's already said he's not getting shine from BT Digger, which I could have told you.
Surprise.
No, I mean, really, like I told people, when I was running for state senate, there were multiple articles where it was some topic, oh, whatever's happening, or oh, there's a race and people are running for senate. And they literally would put photographs and get direct quotes from all 6 of the Democrat candidates. And then Tom and I were at the bottom, barely mentioned. His name was spelled wrong. I was mischaracterized and misquoted, and they didn't have our pictures. They put like a picture of the state house and other random stuff.
So,
I mean,
really funny one.
It's so obvious.
One of the first forum things that I did, Vermont Digger put out this article like the next morning, and they painted it as like this battle between Max and Moreau, and then real quick like, oh, and Ollie, Jake, and Pat were there.
Of course, because they don't care about you. They don't care about the people. They don't care about whatever. That is their people. So anyway, so that's my plug. Like, share, subscribe. Go subscribe. Become a Patreon. All that stuff. Okay, so now that we're closing, Mr. White, I want to give you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say that we haven't otherwise discussed, or whatever you want to tell everybody. Make sure you tell them where to find you, website, volunteer, all that stuff.
So really, so much of this is about perception, and the perception that the candidates are trying to paint. And I've seen a lot of these perceptions that they're trying to paint just be complete disconnects from reality. We've got everybody claiming to be eco-friendly, yet I'm one of the only people talking actively about the sewage treatment plant. We've got a lot of them talking about fiscal responsibility, but they've already been there and they've been fiscally irresponsible the whole time. One of the funniest things I've seen so far is, Moreau has collected about 100 grand. Max is at like 50. Ollie's at about 9 or 10. I think it's kind of funny that we're looking to see who can blow the most amount of money in the shortest period of time and decide that that person should be in charge of Burlington's financial future. I think I'm about $50 into my campaign, and I've been on camera just as much as them almost.
That's crazy. I'm sorry. Yeah. That is crazy. Yeah. Okay, I'm not interrupting again, I swear.
On top of that whole eco-friendly and the exposure thing and them blowing money, they claim to be eco-friendly and eco-conscious, and yet my mailbox keeps filling up with one-time use paper leaflets that then immediately have to go into the recycling bin. I keep seeing, and this is why you won't see those from me, I keep seeing corrugated plastic signs that may or may not get used again, just stuck in the snow, and those always end up in the street. I've found a couple in the lake before. They're very eco-friendly except for when they're campaigning. On top of that, as far as fundraising goes, I have said from the very beginning, and Ollie actually echoed this as well, that I'm not fundraising due to the financial impacts of COVID. I'm running on my own money. I find it morally reprehensible to go around asking people and businesses for what little they have to become part of the government that essentially shut everything down and made it so nobody can afford anything. I'm one of 2 people who said that, and I'm one of 1 people who actually stuck to that. I'm not fundraising. I'm not asking people to volunteer hours of their time, except for my one friend who's my campaign manager. With me, the perception is the reality. I'm not trying to paint myself to be any more eco-friendly or conscious or anything than I actually am. I'm not claiming some moral high ground on funding and then going out and fundraising anyway. I'm for common sense. I'm for everybody in Burlington succeeding. And as far as tracking me down, it's patrickformayor.com. That's the number 4. Everybody gets a kick out of that. I'm on Facebook, Patrick for Mayor of Burlington. I am probably going to be the easiest candidate to talk to. You can send me a message at basically any time on Facebook or the email. Sometimes the email hits my campaign manager first, but even if you just have one question that you think is, dumb or you shouldn't bother me with, shoot me a question. I'm, not everything is out there about me. I'm more than happy to answer it. I would rather honestly have people ask me questions that they're concerned about and give them an answer, whether they like it or not, than to have somebody thinking, maybe I'm about it, maybe I'm not, or thinking that I'm, too high above to reach. I'm literally a regular dude who is running for mayor. You can send me a message on Facebook. I will respond.
So okay. So here's the only thing that concerns me about everything that you just said.
Yeah.
How are you going to reach the people if you don't have volunteers and money and yard signs and stuff?
Well,
I mean, I love it. I love that you're like, I'm green. Okay, cool. But
with everything COVID, what are my volunteers going to do for me?
Knock on doors.
COVID. You're not supposed to be knocking on doors. You're not supposed to be going and getting in people's faces. I mean, I'm not somebody like.
Well, how are you going to reach people? If you're not advertising, you're not knocking on doors, you're not sending mailers.
I would be advertising more on social media, but Facebook has actually shut down any politically related stuff.
That's what I'm saying. So ecology be damned, Patrick. How are you going to tell people you're out there?
I'm going to keep going to the forums. I'm going to keep pestering the news. I've got wonderful people like you who just say, hey, I want you on my YouTube channel. It's been kind of funny. I've been on the radio once already. They invited me back, but they gave me like no notice. So that may happen again.
Okay.
Kurt, if you're out there, give me a date that's not 2 days away and I'll be there.
Well, I will just say, I mean, in all sincerity, I do appreciate, the idea of trying to be more green and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to give you some more shit when we get offline, because
I'm not going to pretend I'm some sort of eco warrior who.
Don't tell anybody.
Some sort of eco warrior who, every single piece of plastic in my house always ends up in the recycling, and I'm only getting things out of the bulk bins and putting them in mason jars. I'm not going to pretend like I'm always perfect, but
here's the deal. Everybody hear me now. Patrick has said he's not going to do all that stuff. I'm going to make him do that when we get off this Zoom call or whatever it is.
I've got I've got a $500 budget. I'm trying not to put in a filing because it confuses people. It's kind of funny. When the news, when I think it was Vermont Digger put out that article about how much money everyone had raised, they were like, and Patrick White has not submitted a financial filing. Yeah, I'm $50 into it. And it's my goodness. Money.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it because I don't want to give you too much crap in front of everybody. But just so everybody knows, if he said that and now you get a piece of paper on your door, it's my fault. You can blame me, not Patrick. Okay. All right. Any closing statements you want to make really quick, and then we'll close?
That was kind of the closing statement. I mean, if you're looking for somebody with some modicum of common sense who isn't pushing only their own agenda and actually wants to serve the people of Burlington and not just some random advocacy group or some board, I'm not connected to them. I'm not tied to them. They aren't paying me. I'm exactly what I present myself to be, and I'm not getting backed by any sort of interest. And my interest is really in the success of Burlington and Burlingtonites.
I like it. All right, Patrick, hold on with me for 1 second. We're going to play the outro that always makes me giggle. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
next week. Yeah, next week is going to be who's next week? Is it Chris Bradley next week? Oh, this is terrible. I'm going to be embarrassed. I believe Chris Bradley is next week. Everybody help me out here. Who is a 2A advocate. So next week is going to be a conversation with Chris Bradley from the Vermont Sportsmen's Club. And we're going to be talking about the gun laws that are in the state legislature right now.
Ooh,
and oh yeah, lots of them, multiple of them.
I don't know if this helps or hurts me, but I am pro Second Amendment.
Praise God.
I've cut down a tree with an AK-47 before. I'm a big fan.
You did not. That's not a thing, is it?
Oh yeah.
Shut up.
Full auto 75 round drum mag. It was already partially cut down, but I finished.
Okay. Okay, now we're gonna have to try this the next time we're out at the range. Okay, that is good. I didn't cover that, so that's a good thing. So yeah, next week, conversation with Chris Bradley about gun rights. Definitely join us, and good night. Okay. Oh, I'm supposed to. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, that wasn't very well timed. Hold on, everybody. Good night.